My name is Eliza Shepherd, and I never thought a childhood memory would become the silent engine of my future. But the moment I watched my sister Melissa laugh at me from behind the teller desk, just seconds before 6 duffel bags stuffed with $5.5 million were dropped at her feet, I knew they had all underestimated me. Again. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And if you've ever had to prove someone wrong with grace instead of shouting, I think this story might hit home. Let me take you back to where it all began, right in the heart of my parents' living room in Sacramento, on a rainy Saturday that should have felt magical but didn't. I was 7. My sisters, Melissa and April, had just exploded into squeals of excitement after hearing the news. We were going to Disneyland. Or so I thought. I was already imagining the spinning teacups and caramel popcorn when my mom crouched down beside me with that gentle voice she reserved for disappointing me. "Eliza, sweetheart, you'll be staying with Aunt Carol this week." I blinked, confused. "But why?" She smoothed my hair like that made up for what she was about to say. "You're more quiet. Carol will enjoy your company. The park's a bit too much for someone like you." Someone like me. My sisters didn't help. Melissa, the oldest, already wore the smug confidence of a girl who'd been told yes her entire life. "Try not to cry when we post from the castle," she sang, tossing her braid like she was in a shampoo commercial. April followed with a giggle. "We'll tell Mickey you said hi." I stood there in the middle of the cluttered living room, board games half open on the shelf, the TV flashing reruns in the background, and felt the kind of shame that stays with you. Not the shame of punishment, but the shame of being unwanted. My dad was by the door, already loading their suitcases. He didn't even look at me when he said, "Go get your bag, kiddo, we're dropping you at Carol's in an hour." So I went. Quietly. I packed my clothes into the little red suitcase with the broken zipper, folding everything too carefully as if neatness would somehow redeem me. I didn't cry, not then. But inside me, something shifted. A new kind of storm started to brew. Not the kind that lashes out. The kind that waits, watches, remembers. At dinner that night, Carol served her usual vegetable stew and I sat stiffly at the table, trying not to let the betrayal show on my face. I wasn't good at hiding feelings yet. She must have noticed something in my silence because she reached across the table, tapped her spoon twice and said, "I know you're wondering why you're here and not with them." I looked up, startled. "You're not less than them, Eliza. You're just different." "And different," she said with a little smile, "can be very, very powerful if you learn how to use it." No one had ever said something like that to me before, not at school, not at home. But in that moment a tiny seed was planted, one that would grow roots through every quiet humiliation, every backhanded compliment, every time I was told I wasn't the right fit, or a little too serious. That Disneyland trip became the family favorite story for years. Remember when Eliza stayed with Carol and missed the princess parade? Melissa would laugh at dinners. She was so mad she refused to wear the mouse ears for a year. They thought it was funny. I remembered it differently. And the thing about people like me, quiet, observant, underestimated, we don't forget. We wait, we grow, and eventually, we flip the script. The first morning at Aunt Carol's house in Santa Rosa was quiet. No screeching cartoon voices from the TV. No sisters arguing over glitter headbands. Just the faint sound of a kettle whistling and birds chirping through an open kitchen window. For a girl used to chaos, the stillness felt like stepping into another world. Carol was already up, dressed in a lavender cardigan and soft slippers, flipping through the business section of the newspaper. I hovered in the hallway, unsure if I should wait to be called or tiptoe back to the guest room. "Eliza," she said without looking up, "come sit." I made chamomile. "You don't drink coffee yet, right?" I sat, quietly, always quietly. She poured the tea and pushed a small bowl of strawberries toward me. "I read your mom's note. Sounds like you could use a little peace this week." I nodded, not trusting my voice. She turned another page. "You like puzzles?" I blinked. "I think so." "Good. After breakfast, we're going to solve one together. I'll teach you chess." I remember thinking that was strange. Kids my age were learning cartwheels and TikTok dances. Chess wasn't exactly cool. But I nodded again because saying no felt impolite, and because something about the way she said it made me feel like it mattered. That afternoon, she set up a wooden chessboard between us. The pieces were worn, polished smooth by decades of use. She picked up the knight and moved it in an L shape, explaining each piece with a level of care usually reserved for bedtime stories. Not condescending, just invested. The queen, she said, is the most powerful piece. But you must protect her, she draws attention. The king may be important, but the queen makes the moves. I watched her hands as she spoke, the way her fingers guided the pieces with precision and confidence. See this, she pointed to a trap she'd set, moving my bishop into jeopardy without me noticing. That's the thing about strategy. It's not always about strength, it's about vision. It wasn't just a game. I could feel it even then. She was teaching me something bigger. Teaching me how to think, not just how to win. That night, she handed me a children's book about money. I took it reluctantly, expecting it to be boring. But I couldn't stop turning the pages. It was full of simple, brilliant concepts: compound interest, the difference between assets and liabilities, the value of patience. The next morning at breakfast, she quizzed me like it was a game show. What's the rule of 72? She asked, sipping her coffee. If you divide 72 by your interest rate, that's how many years it takes your money to double, I answered, proud. She smiled, tapping her spoon against the mug like applause. One day you'll understand compound interest better than any Prince Charming. Every day that week followed the same rhythm: morning finance talks, afternoon chess, evening stories. Not about princesses or castles, but about women who built companies, ran countries, cracked codes. She told me about women who were ignored because they were soft-spoken or underestimated because they weren't loud, but who made quiet, permanent changes in the world. You don't have to be loud to take up space, Eliza, she said one night while we folded laundry together. You just have to know where to place your pieces. The thing is, she never once asked about the Disneyland trip. Never asked why I wasn't there. Never made it about pity. Instead, she made the days so rich, so full of new things to learn and explore that I forgot about Space Mountain and Mickey Mouse ears. Well, almost. One afternoon, I heard a notification ding from Carol's laptop. She stepped away from her desk and I glanced at the screen. It was an email from my mom. Thanks again for taking Eliza. The girls are having a blast. I'll send photos later. Later that night, I asked, did she send them? Carol paused, then nodded. She did. Can I see? She hesitated. Are you sure? I thought I was. But when I saw the photo, Melissa and April beaming in front of the Sleeping Beauty castle, sparkly ears on their heads, holding churros in both hands, I felt my throat tight. They look happy, I whispered, the words catching on their way out. Carol didn't say anything at first. She just reached over and gently closed the laptop. They look loud, she finally said with a wink. Let's go play one more round before bed. You almost had me in checkmate earlier. That night, lying in the guest room surrounded by bookshelves and the soft ticking of an old wall clock, I realized something. Disneyland would always be there. But this quiet corner of strategy and self-worth, this was rare. By the time the week ended, I didn't want to leave. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I'd tasted something new. Purpose. Carol hugged me tightly when my parents came to pick me up. Melissa climbed out of the car wearing a new hoodie with Minnie Mouse on the front, already showing April a video of the parade. No one asked how my week had gone. Not until we were halfway home and stuck at a red light. My mom glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Carol said you were really into the chess stuff. That true? I nodded. She hummed, already turning up the radio. Well, good. At least you got something out of the week. At least. But that week didn't just teach me how to move pawns and calculate interest. It taught me how to be underestimated and use it. Because Carol didn't just host me that week, she saw me. And for the first time in my life, I started seeing myself too. It was raining again, just like that week so many years ago when Carol first changed my life. But this time, the storm wasn't inside me. Not exactly. It was quieter now. Sadder. I stood beside Carol's closed casket in a navy wool suit she would have approved of. Structured, timeless, confident. My hair was pinned back, my face calm, even as my hands clenched around the leather folder the lawyer had handed me minutes earlier. Eliza Shepherd, he'd said in a hushed tone, offering a small nod of respect. She left very clear instructions. Everything is in there. The chapel smelled like lilies and damp coats. Mourners filled the pews, murmuring softly as piano music played in the background. Some of them wore black. Others came in gray, beige, or that strange olive color people mistake for formal wear, but none of them stood as still as I did. Eliza, that you? I turned slightly and saw my cousin Lauren approaching with wide eyes and a thin smile. We hadn't spoken in years. She left everything to you, she asked, barely bothering to lower her voice. The house, the company, I blinked. The firm. Lauren's eyebrows lifted. I didn't even know Aunt Carol had a firm. She did, I said. She just didn't talk much about herself, which was true. Carol had been private to a fault. While most adults spent holidays bragging about cruises and promotions, she asked questions and listened. Wow, Lauren muttered, her voice trailing off as she glanced around the chapel. Whispers were already starting. She left it all to Eliza. Why not split it between the nieces and nephews? Didn't even have kids of her own. Must have been grooming Eliza for years. I didn't care, not really, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. Not because I wanted their approval, but because even now, at this moment, they couldn't just let her legacy be about what she gave. Only about what they didn't get. I walked to the front, resting my hand on the smooth, sealed wood of the casket. I'll handle it, I whispered. I'll take care of what you built. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. It was the lawyer again. Gray-haired, glasses fogged at the corners. Eliza, she left specific wording in the will, said it was important you hear it read aloud before anyone else, he said. I nodded. Go ahead. He opened a smaller envelope, removed a single page and began. To Eliza, if they're whispering, let them. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to lead. I'm giving you everything not out of sentiment but because you earned it. Every game of chess. Every financial worksheet. Every question you asked that no one else bothered to ask. You see what others miss. That's your gift. Use it. The firm is yours. Don't apologize for that. And don't you dare play small to make anyone else comfortable. Carol, I didn't realize I was crying until the paper blurred. By the time I turned back toward the crowd, the chapel had gone still. Even Lauren was silent. She left it to me, I said quietly, folding the page, because she knew I would protect it. No one replied. And for the first time, I didn't need them to. That afternoon, after the service ended and the relatives scattered to their cars, I returned to Carol's house alone. I stood in the entryway, looking at the worn chessboard still sitting by the fireplace. I set it up, the way she taught me, and as I moved the queen across the board, taking the center, I realized this wasn't the end. It was the start of my move. The first time I walked into the boardroom of Carol's firm, my heels echoed louder than my voice. It was early Monday, a gray morning thick with expectation. 12 employees sat around the sleek glass table, most of them older than me, most of them unsure what to make of the young woman in the navy suit who now signed their checks. They didn't see a legacy. They saw a question mark. I paused by the head of the table, setting down my notes without opening them. The sunlight caught the corners of my file folder, and for a moment the silence pressed in like fog, then I spoke. Carol built this firm on strategy, quiet, deliberate, patient strategy. A few glanced at one another. A man near the end shifted in his seat, folding his arms. His name was Peter, senior analyst. 20 years in, used to being heard. She believed in people who could see value where others missed it, I continued. And I'm here because she trusted me to carry that forward. Not just to maintain her vision, but to expand it. Still silence. So I closed my folder and stepped away from the head of the table, walking slowly. She once told me that finance isn't about numbers, it's about foresight, about knowing when to move, when to wait, and when to play the long game. I turned toward them. Well, today we move. A few eyebrows lifted. I've reviewed your portfolios, I've seen the systems, and I believe we can do more, not louder, not riskier, but smarter. Peter cleared his throat. With respect, Miss Shepherd, this firm was already in good hands. What exactly do you plan to change? I smiled gently. I plan to make us unmissable. Carol made us invisible giants, quietly outperforming louder firms. Now I want us to be known for our integrity and agility. Another employee, a younger woman named Ruby, spoke up. So no mass layoffs, no merger. No, I said firmly. No layoffs, no merger, just smarter strategy. And shared wins. There it was, a flicker of relief across the room. I know what it means to be underestimated, I added. Let's show them what it looks like when the underestimated lead. That was the turning point. The meeting ended with polite nods, but Ruby lingered by the door. I used to play chess with Carol sometimes, she said, half smiling. She told me the rook was her favorite. Why? I asked. She said it moves straight but never forward blindly. I nodded. That sounds like her. That week I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I arrived early, stayed late, and reviewed every file. I scheduled one-on-ones with each department head, listened to their concerns, learned their names, their strengths, their frustrations. I didn't pretend to know everything, but I knew how to learn fast and how to listen well. On Friday morning, our equity fund had a minor breakthrough. A stock Carol had quietly invested in months before had surged after a small tech company announced a game-changing patent. The gain wasn't earth-shattering, but it was ours, a validation of patience. Ruby burst into my office, breathless. "We just hit a 9% return on the small-cap portfolio. That's double last quarter." Peter stepped in behind her, holding a printout. "We thought it might be a fluke, but it's real." I looked at both of them. "Let's call it what it is, a beginning." Ruby laughed. "You want us to tell the press?" "Not yet, let them whisper," I said with a smile. "We're just getting started." And as they left, I looked toward the framed photo of Carol I'd placed on the bookshelf beside my desk. "You saw this coming, didn't you?" I murmured. It was the first Friday in years I hadn't felt invisible, and I intended to keep it that way. 2 weekends later, I pulled into my parents' driveway with a trunk full of effort and good intentions. The sun had barely begun to set, casting a warm orange glow over the manicured hedges and the brick porch I once scraped my knees on. It was my mother's idea, this family dinner. "Just a little get-together," she said on the phone. "Your sisters will be here, you should come." I took a breath before reaching for the bags in the backseat. 3 crisp paper shopping bags, each from a different designer store. Not flashy, nothing neon or logo out. Just thoughtful, expensive, personal gifts. A peace offering or maybe a quiet bridge. Melissa's bag held a silk scarf she'd once pointed at in a boutique window. April's a limited edition makeup set in her favorite tones. My mother's gift was the most understated, a leather wallet stitched with her initials. Simple, classic, something she could use daily. As I stepped up to the door, I heard laughter from inside. Familiar, casual, close. I hesitated a moment, then rang the bell. April opened the door, her smile flickered. "Oh, you're early." "By 10 minutes, I said, holding up the bags. "Brought something for everyone." She stepped aside, and I entered, the scent of roasted vegetables and something buttery wafting from the kitchen. The house looked just as I remembered. Same sun-faded family photos in the hallway, same chipped banister my dad always meant to fix. Melissa was leaning against the counter, wine glass in hand, wearing a new dress and that same old smirk. "Eliza," she said, drawing out the syllables like they amused her. "Didn't think you'd actually show." "I said I would," I replied, setting the bags on the table. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I know," I said, lifting the wallet from her bag. "But I wanted to." She took it, her smile brief. "Thank you." Melissa reached into her bag, holding up the scarf with a raised eyebrow. "Wow, you rob a bank or something," April snorted. "Seriously, this is like nice. I smiled lightly. "No banks involved, just thought you'd like them." Melissa tied the scarf loosely around her neck, twisting to see herself in the microwave reflection. "Well, guess money changes people." April murmured, "Changes how much they think they need to buy affection." I froze for a moment, letting their words pass through me like a wave. I was used to this tone, backhanded praise wrapped in sibling banter, but it didn't land like it used to. Not anymore. My mother set a platter of rolls on the table. "Well, let's eat before it gets cold." Dinner passed in a rhythm I remembered well. My father told an outdated joke that only he laughed at. April took second helpings without asking. Melissa poured more wine than she drank. No one asked about my work. No one mentioned Carol. It was as if they were all allergic to the idea that something had changed. After dessert, while clearing the dishes, I stood at the sink rinsing plates when my mother stepped beside me. "Melissa says you've been working a lot," she said, not looking at me. "I have," she hesitated. "Just don't lose yourself in it, Eliza. Money's not everything." I turned toward her, the plate still in my hand. "I know, that's why I tried to show up tonight, because family should matter, too." She dried a fork. "You always were the serious one. And you always believed that was a flaw." The words came out softer than I expected. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a second I thought maybe she'd say something meaningful. But she didn't. She just smiled and said, "Dessert was good, wasn't it?" Later, as I drove away, the bags long empty and the night air cooler than it had been, I realized something: you can have success. You can carry it into old rooms, wear it like armor, dress it up as generosity, but if someone's determined not to see you, they won't. Still, I wasn't angry, not anymore, just done pretending that approval was the same thing as love. By Monday morning, the warmth from that awkward family dinner had evaporated, if it had existed at all. I was back in my office, back in control. The skyline outside the floor-to-ceiling windows glittered faintly under the early sun, and the hum of the city buzzed beneath me. I had arrived before anyone else. I liked it that way. The silence, the clean scent of polished surfaces and possibility. "Your 9 o'clock is ready," my assistant Gavin said through the intercom just as I finished reviewing the contract. "Send them in." Two attorneys from the buyer's side stepped into the room, all smiles and briefcases. I greeted them with calm professionalism, offered espresso, and then got down to business. We were finalizing the sale of a dormant but valuable asset, one of Carol's early investments, a boutique analytics software division that no longer fit our firm's streamlined direction. It had quietly appreciated for years, and now at the perfect time I was cashing it out. The deal closed in 20 minutes. $5.5 million, liquid, immediate, clean. As the lawyers packed up and offered polite handshakes, Gavin poked his head in. "Congrats, Eliza, that's a serious win." "Thanks," I said, standing. "Can you give me a minute?" Once the door clicked shut, I walked to the tall windows and let the number sink in. Not because I hadn't seen money before, but because this time it was in my hands. No partners to answer to, no silent figure behind the curtain, just me. I turned back to my desk, opened a second folder, the one Gavin didn't know about, and reviewed the transfer paperwork I'd been preparing for weeks. A separate trust, my name on the originating account, the Sierra Guardian Trust Company on the receiving end. It wasn't about hiding the money. It was about protecting it, directing it, building something of my own that couldn't be misinterpreted, rewritten, or claimed. Gavin knocked lightly and entered again, holding a printout. "One last thing, confirmation from the wire desk. Funds are ready for transfer as soon as you give the word." "Good, I'll handle the delivery myself," he blinked. "You want to hand-deliver it?" "Yes," he hesitated. "Should I call the courier company just in case?" "No." I folded the paperwork and placed it into my leather briefcase. "First, I need to make a stop." Gavin looked puzzled but nodded, "Of course." As he turned to leave, I added, "Gavin, yes, have the finance team prepare a test deposit, just $100. He frowned slightly. "You mean as a trial run for the trust?" "Not exactly." He tilted his head. "Then what's it for?" I met his eyes, steady and unreadable. "A test." The marble floors of Sierra Guardian Trust gleamed like polished bone, cool, immaculate, and intentionally intimidating. I walked in alone, heels clicking across the pristine surface, carrying nothing but my briefcase and the calm resolve of someone with nothing left to prove. The front desk receptionist smiled with bland politeness as I approached. "Good morning," I said, placing the slim folder on the counter. "I'd like to make a small deposit." "Of course, do you have an existing account with us?" "Not yet," I replied, "but I've selected your firm to house a new trust I'm opening this week. I'd like to make a test deposit first." The receptionist's fingers paused over her keyboard. She blinked once, then recovered. "Certainly, one moment please." She typed something, then looked up. "Melissa Shepherd will assist you, she's just coming out now." Of course. It was the reason I came here in person. The reason I hadn't sent Gavin or a courier. The reason I'd picked this location of all places. I turned just in time to see Melissa step through the frosted glass doors behind the teller line. Her walk was confident, her makeup sharp, her blazer a little too tight in that I'm thriving sort of way. She didn't see me at first, but I saw her. She leaned over the receptionist's shoulder, scanning the screen, then her expression shifted. "Eliza," I offered a cool smile. "Morning," she blinked. "What are you doing here, making a deposit?" Her laugh was instant and loud enough to echo. "I what?" she asked, voice rising. "You came all the way here for that." I opened the folder and slid a personal check for $100 across the counter. "I wanted to see how your team handles new clients," I said simply. Melissa glanced at the amount, and her lips curled. "You know we're a private trust company, right?" she said, turning so that the receptionist and two nearby associates could hear. "We don't really cater to clients making tiny donations from their savings." A small chuckle rippled from the staff around her. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. I stayed silent, watching my sister soak in the moment. She always did love a small audience. "I mean," Melissa continued, gesturing vaguely at my briefcase, "most of our clients have more than grocery money to spare." Another laugh. Her voice was coated in that syrupy sweet superiority I remembered too well from childhood. the tone she used when our parents let her skip chores, or when she mocked my chess trophies at the dinner table. I placed my hands gently on the edge of the counter. "That was a test deposit," I said softly. Melissa narrowed her eyes. "What?" I opened the briefcase slowly, deliberately, and removed a single document. Then another, then another. Behind me, the glass doors opened. Two men in black suits entered silently, each carrying 3 identical black duffel bags. Security eyed them with mild concern until I nodded. The lobby quieted. Every pair of eyes followed the bags as they were placed carefully beside me. Melissa's voice was barely audible. "What is this?" I turned to the receptionist. "Please inform your director that Eliza Shepard is here to finalize a new high-value trust transfer. I'd like confirmation before close of business today." Melissa's face drained of color. "You're joking." "I don't joke about money," I replied. One of the tellers had stood up behind the glass. A second receptionist picked up the phone, murmuring quickly. Melissa stepped forward. We don't handle cash drop-offs like this without a pre-approved." "Your director has my documents," I said evenly. "And I believe your onboarding policies apply equally, unless they've changed." Her mouth opened, closed. She looked down at the duffel bags as if trying to do the math in her head. I watched the moment her posture shifted from amusement to confusion, from smugness to panic. "You should probably call him," I added, turning back to the receptionist. "This may take a while." And behind me the bags sat quietly. Like evidence, you could hear a paperclip drop. The lobby of Sierra Guardian Trust, usually a fortress of muted tones and hushed wealth, stood frozen in place. Melissa's laugh had long vanished. In its place, silence thick enough to choke on. The duffel bags, 6 in total, sat obediently on the white marble like well-trained dogs. Each one zipped but bulging, the black canvas stretched taut by bundles of cash inside. Crisp, stacked, wrapped in bands that bore the Federal Reserve watermark. Melissa's voice came out hoarse. "Eliza, what is this?" I didn't respond. Not yet. The 2 bodyguards, professional, neutral, unbothered by the theater unfolding, stepped back to the glass wall and waited like statues. The second receptionist whispered into her headset. "Yes, sir, she's here now. Yes, with the full amount." Melissa looked from the bags to me, eyes narrowing. "You're trying to make a scene." "No," I said calmly. "Making a deposit." I could feel the weight of attention from every corner of the lobby. Tellers paused mid-transaction. A client in a camel coat stepped back from the counter, pretending to check his phone but clearly watching. Even the security guard by the entrance had taken a slow step closer, his hand resting just above his hip, uneasy, unsure. Melissa squared her shoulders. "You should have called ahead. We have protocols for this." "I'm following them," I replied. "And your staff's response has been informative." Her cheeks flushed. "You don't understand how this works," she snapped. "People don't just walk in with, 'What is this, $5 million in cash?'" 5.5, I corrected. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "Are you trying to embarrass me? You're doing that all by yourself." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Behind the counter, one of the tellers lowered his gaze, suddenly fascinated with straightening his keyboard. Melissa looked around, panic seeping through her carefully contoured expression. "He's not available," she said suddenly. "The director, he's in meetings all day." "I doubt that," I said, opening my phone and scrolling. "But I'll give him a call anyway." Melissa's jaw tensed. "Eliza," the call connected on the second ring. "This is Whitlock." "Mr. Whitlock, it's Eliza Shepard," I said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "I'm here at your Sacramento branch. I'm trying to make a scheduled trust deposit, but I've encountered some unexpected resistance." A pause. "Ms. Shepard, one moment, please." I held the line as Melissa slowly stepped backward, her hand twitching toward her blazer pocket like she was reaching for a disappearing lifeline. Mr. Whitlock returned, voice cool but sharp. "I'll be down in 5 minutes." I ended the call and finally turned to look her full in the face. She looked like a tower cracking from the inside. "I tried to start small," I said softly. "To give you a chance." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And all around us, her coworkers pretended to be busy, pretended not to have heard her loud, humiliating laugh earlier. But they had. Every single one of them had. By the time Mr. Whitlock descended from his executive suite, the atmosphere in the Sierra Guardian Trust lobby had changed completely. No more snickering. No more smirks. Just a stifling quiet, everyone pretending to be occupied while their eyes tracked my every move. Melissa stood rigid behind the counter now, arms crossed tightly over her chest, lips pressed into a line that used to make April and me fall silent at the dinner table. But I wasn't a child anymore. The elevator dinged. Out stepped a silver-haired man in a navy suit that looked stitched to him. Whitlock, polished, polite, and unmistakably furious. "Ms. Shepherd," he said, crossing the lobby in swift, measured strides. "I apologize for the delay." He extended a hand. I shook it firmly. "Shall we speak privately?" "Actually," I said, lifting my briefcase and tapping it once, "I think it's important that what happened here is documented fully, with timestamps, names, and staff conduct." Whitlock's gaze flicked to Melissa, who suddenly found something fascinating about her pen. He cleared his throat. "Understood. Let's step into my office." The bags were quietly collected by the bodyguards, now following us into the private elevator as Whitlock gestured for his assistant to escort us. Melissa made no move to follow. I didn't ask her to. Inside his sleek corner office, Whitlock gestured to the leather chair across from his desk while his assistant brought water. "I reviewed the deposit details personally," he began. "Everything is in order. We had no knowledge your initial deposit would be handled in such inappropriate fashion." "I'm not concerned with embarrassment," I said evenly. "I'm concerned with protocol, bias, and a pattern of class-based discrimination." His mouth twitched, whether in concern or calculation I wasn't sure. "I was treated as though my presence here was a nuisance," I continued. "Not because of my paperwork, not because of policy, but because I made a small test deposit." He nodded, slow and careful. "It appears your sister did not recognize the account profile associated with your name." "She didn't need to," I said. "No client should be mocked for any amount, publicly, in front of staff." He nodded again. "I agree, and I'll be issuing a written apology by end of day." "That won't be enough." I reached into my briefcase and retrieved a single typed page. 3 paragraphs, 4 names, 8 timestamps. I slid it across the desk. "A formal complaint," I said, "to be added to Melissa Shepherd's personnel file, including witnesses and a record of her exact words." He accepted the paper, scanning the first few lines. His jaw tightened. "I assume she'll be suspended pending review," I added, my tone neutral. "Yes," he said quickly, "immediately. And I expect the full compliance report shared with me before the week ends for my records." Whitlock folded the document carefully. "Absolutely, you have my word." I stood, smoothing my jacket. "I'll have my legal advisor follow up regarding the trust terms, but for now I trust the funds will be handled with better care." He opened the door for me. "Ms. Shepherd, again, my deepest apologies." I paused as I stepped out, turning slightly. "I wasn't embarrassed today, Mr. Whitlock." He looked confused. No, but someone else finally was, and that's been overdue for a long time." As I rode the elevator back down, I passed Melissa, who was standing near the teller line, her face pale and unreadable. Her hands were clenched at her sides. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. The silence was enough. The corner conference room they ushered me into after the trust was finalized was sleek and cold, polished chrome fixtures, a faint smell of lemon oil, and a large glass table with not a single fingerprint on it. Mr. Whitlock closed the door behind us, the weight of it clicking softly shut. "I want to be clear," he said, pulling out a chair for me. "What happened today does not reflect Sierra Guardian's values. Ms. Shepherd, I owe you a full apology personally and on behalf of the institution." I sat down, folding my hands over the smooth surface of the table. "Then I suggest you stop speaking like a statement and start listening like a person." He blinked. The air settled. "I'm listening," he said more quietly this time. I reached into my folder, pulled out the same single-page report I'd given him earlier but with one addition, a cover letter addressed to the Trust's Compliance Board, carbon copied to the parent corporation's legal counsel. I laid it flat on the table. "No client should be made to feel small," I said. "Not for the amount they carry, not for the clothes they wear, and certainly not for being quiet." He nodded slowly. "Melissa will be suspended immediately. We'll launch a formal internal investigation, and her position will be reviewed under HR protocol." I said nothing for a moment, just looked at him. He shifted in his seat. "If I may ask, was this entire visit planned?" I tilted my head. "What do you mean? The duffel bags, the $100 test deposit, the timing." I met his eyes directly. "Of course it was." Whitlock exhaled, almost in awe. I grew up being told I was too serious, I continued. Too quiet. Too much of a thinker, not enough of a joiner. People like Melissa, they grew up being told the opposite, that they were the sun and the rest of us just revolved around them. He was silent. This trust, I said, motioning toward the confirmation documents now signed and sealed, isn't just money, it's a boundary, a line between who I was told I had to be and who I decided to become. Whitlock nodded again, softer now. And Melissa, she embarrassed herself, I said, standing. I simply exposed it. He remained seated as I gathered my papers, as if sensing he wasn't meant to escort me this time. I'll expect the formal report by Friday, I said at the door. Of course. And Mr. Whitlock, I paused, hand on the handle. Yes, you'd be surprised what quiet people are capable of when they stop waiting for permission. With that, I left. Outside, the lobby had returned to its regular rhythm. Clients in tailored coats. Quiet conversations. The illusion of order restored. But Melissa was gone, not just from the teller desk, but from the building. As I stepped out into the bright Sacramento sun, briefcase in hand, a single thought struck me with the sharp clarity of a queen moving across a chessboard. I didn't need revenge, just resolution. And now I had it. The roast chicken on my parents' dining table smelled the same as it had when I was 12. Same cracked white platter, same parsley garnish like it meant something. April had set the table with mismatched napkins, and my dad poured sparkling water into old wine glasses like it was a celebration. It wasn't. I could feel it the moment I stepped into the house. Tension hummed under every smile, coiled tight beneath every "how was traffic?" My mother was stirring gravy like it had done something wrong. Melissa wasn't there. And no one said why. Dinner began in stiff silence. Forks scraped plates. My father chewed too loudly. April tried to make conversation, chatting about her latest course credits and her new houseplant like she was single-handedly holding the family together. But no one asked about the trust. No one asked about Sierra Guardian, until dessert. My mother set down a bowl of fruit sorbet in front of me like it was a peace treaty, and said with that clipped, breathy tone she used when trying to sound reasonable, "You know, Eliza, we heard about what happened at Melissa's work." I didn't respond right away. I took a spoonful of sorbet, raspberry, tart, cold. My father folded his napkin and leaned forward. "She was humiliated," he said. "You embarrassed your sister." There it was. No, what happened? No, are you okay? Just the accusation, already polished, already decided. I set my spoon down slowly. "No," I said, looking each of them in the eye. "Melissa embarrassed herself. I simply exposed it." My mother gave a small, exasperated sigh. "She didn't know who you were. You could have just told her." "She did know," I said evenly. "She recognized me. She laughed anyway." April cleared her throat, but no one acknowledged her. "And dragging in bodyguards," my dad said. "That was a bit theatrical, don't you think?" I tilted my head. "Would it have been theatrical if a man had done it?" He flinched just barely. "Let me ask you something," I said, voice quiet. "If Melissa had been the one treated like that, dismissed, laughed at, mocked in public, what would you have done?" They didn't answer, because we all knew the truth. They would have raised hell. My mother would have written letters. My father would have demanded meetings. They would have defended her, protected her, cried foul. But for me, they just wanted me to be quiet again. Except this time I didn't shrink back. Before the silence could calcify, April set her fork down with a soft clink. "Liza's the only one who's ever treated me like I mattered," she said, voice clear but shaking. "Maybe we all need to stop pretending we deserve her silence." My mother's lips parted slightly, startled. My father looked toward April like he hadn't quite heard her right. But I saw it, the flicker of shame. April didn't stop. "She helped me apply for my internship," she said, glancing at me. "She reads my drafts when no one else cares. And Melissa's been awful to her for years. We all saw it." She turned to me now, voice lowering. "I'm sorry it took me this long to say something." For a moment I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, but because I hadn't expected anyone else at that table to find theirs. "Thank you," I said, and my voice didn't waver. April nodded. My parents didn't speak again for the rest of dinner, and when I left, I didn't feel like I was running away from anything. I felt like I had finally stepped out of a room I was never meant to live in. 3 weeks passed, long enough for the air to settle, long enough for the firm to grow into its new rhythm, long enough that I had almost stopped wondering whether Melissa would show up again. And then, one Tuesday morning, she did. Gavin buzzed through the intercom with a hesitant tone I hadn't heard before. Eliza, your sister is here, Melissa. I froze for half a second, then straightened my blazer. Send her in. The door opened slowly, and there she was. No blazer this time, no smug grin, just Melissa, hair pulled back, makeup minimal, eyes rimmed pink. She clutched a folded piece of paper in both hands like it was all she had left. She stood just inside the doorway, uncertain. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. She stepped forward, placed the letter on my desk like it might break. I wrote this. I figured I'd say it badly if I tried to speak off the cuff. I nodded but didn't reach for it. She glanced around my office, eyes lingering on the bookshelves, the glass awards, the photo of Carol beside my chess set. This is a lot nicer than where I was sitting. There wasn't bitterness in her voice, just recognition. I didn't come to fight, she added quickly. I know what I said, what I did, I can't take it back. Silence stretched between us. For once I let it. She finally exhaled. When they suspended me, I wanted to blame you. I did for a bit. It was easier than looking at myself. Then the HR director played back the lobby footage. My laugh, my words, it was brutal. I nodded once. That laugh wasn't new, Melissa winced. I was always so scared of losing footing, she admitted. Being the one everyone rolled their eyes at, I thought if I stayed on top, louder, faster, meaner, I'd stay important. And did you? I asked softly. She shook her head. I just stayed small. She reached into her purse, pulled out a slim paperback book, and held it out like a peace offering. I remembered this, she said. From Carol's shelf, I found a copy online, the same one you used to carry around. I took it in both hands, The Intelligent Investor. The edges were already dog-eared, pages marked in pink highlighter. I started reading it, she said, twisting her fingers. And I don't understand half of it, but I want to, and I was wondering if maybe you'd help me learn. I opened the book, flipping to the first dog-eared page. One sentence was underlined twice. The investor's chief problem, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself. I closed the book slowly, looked at her. Sit down, I said, motioning to the chair across from me. Her eyes watered again, but she sat. I opened a drawer, pulled out a yellow legal pad and handed it to her. We'll start with compound interest. She laughed, quiet, surprised. Just like Carol did with you. Exactly. Outside, the city kept moving, cars honking, elevators dinging, deals being made. But inside that office, something else was starting. Not a reunion built on guilt. A rebuilding, brick by brick, lesson by lesson. April joined us later that day, sliding into the office with her usual stack of research folders and an eager smile. Are we onboarding Melissa now? She teased. Looks that way, I said. And for the first time in a long time, the three of us sat in the same room, not as rivals, not as competitors, but as women building something real. Together. 2 years can change everything, if you build with intention. Tonight, I stood behind a crystal podium etched with the gold lettering of the Trust Women Gala, overlooking a sea of donors, alumni, and first-generation scholars in floor-length gowns and borrowed confidence. We were in San Francisco's historic Fairmont Ballroom, all chandeliers and vaulted ceilings, the kind of place Carol would have pretended to find too stuffy, while secretly loving every detail. My voice carried clearly through the speakers. I wasn't nervous, I'd earned this voice. And so, I said, glancing toward the front row, when people ask why our firm created the Carol R. Mason Fund for Young Women in Finance, I say this, because sometimes the loudest legacy isn't the one with the biggest voice. It's the one that watches you grow in silence, believing in you before the world does. The room fell still. April gave me a thumbs up from her seat, and Melissa sat beside her, blinking quickly, a soft smile pressed into the corner of her mouth. They looked different now. Lighter, not perfect, but stronger. The Carol R. Mason Fund had awarded 12 scholarships in the past year. Our firm had not only grown, it had transformed. Carol's long-ignored portfolio models were now part of a case study at Stanford. Our mentorship program paired underprivileged high school girls with female financial advisors every summer. But none of it came from noise. It came from persistence, patience, and one woman who had seen a quiet, overlooked girl and taught her how to take up space, without asking permission. After the speech, I stepped down into the audience as a standing ovation rippled through the room. A few people dabbed their eyes. Ruby from the firm wrapped me in a proud hug. Donors I'd once pitched to nervously now waited in line to shake my hand. Later, after dessert and wine, I found myself by the ballroom's side balcony, breathing in the cool night air. Melissa joined me a moment later, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. You were incredible, she said softly, handing one over. Thanks. She leaned on the railing beside me. You know, I used to think you were boring, all that reading, all that silence. And now? I asked, raising an eyebrow. She smiled. Now I know you were just in training. We both laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't erase the past but acknowledges how far you've come from it. Carol would be so proud of you, Melissa added. I looked out at the lights of San Francisco below us, glimmering like stars that had decided to live on Earth. She'd be proud of you too, I said. You didn't just apologize, you changed. Melissa turned to me, eyes shimmering. Still learning, still showing up. That's enough. Behind us, April called out, holding her phone up for a photo. Smile like you actually like each other. We both rolled our eyes and posed anyway. Click. And just like that, a new memory was made, one not built on shame or jealousy but on legacy and choice. Back inside, as I stepped toward the stage once more to present the scholarship winners, I held onto one thought, the one that had carried me from a forgotten child in a quiet Santa Rosa living room to this shimmering ballroom. Success isn't about how loud you are at the table. It's about what you build when they think you're not watching. That was the end of my story. When April finally spoke up at that dinner table and defended me, when no one else did, I wondered how many years she had been waiting for someone else to go first. Did she do the right thing, or have you ever found yourself in her place, quietly watching something unfair and finally choosing to speak? Tell me in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. And if this story moved you even a little, please like the video and subscribe so we can keep telling the ones that don't usually get heard.